Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here, of course, and in the company of all of you, as well as all our speakers joining us virtually. Thank you for your attention. Now, welcome to our session today. As you know, it's entitled Crisis. In crisis, there's hope and opportunity. I'm Chahal, and of course, my privilege to be with all of you here today to look at how we can all recover and rebound after being hit by what we know is an unprecedented crisis. In my preparation for the session today, I took, much pride in looking and reading and trying to research as well about the MICE industry. I am a part of it to some extent, but I was trying to really understand, or perhaps even better, look for a one-size solution that could help us all in our discussion. But as Google would have it, you start from one place and you end up somewhere else. And what I stumbled upon and came to realize is that in our culture, or rather in many cultures in the APEC region especially, crisis is generally associated with words like danger and opportunity. And these deadlocks really can occur at the most unfortunate times, but they then force us to begin to think, or as they like to say, think out of the box. And this close scrutiny, when we look at it closely, we realize that crisis situations really are opportunities for us to advance, to strategize, and enhance, keeping in line with our theme for today, rebuilding confidence. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, it gives me great honor and pride to introduce to you all our panelists. Of course, joining us right here, Secretary General, Ministry of Tourism, Arts and Culture of Malaysia, as well as the Chairman of the MICEB, Malaysian Convention and Exhibition Bureau, YBhg, Dato Dr. Noor Zari bin Hamat. And also joining us internationally from the rest of the region as well. All our speakers has been introduced by the MC as well. We'll be hearing from each and every one of our speakers in a short while. But as a refresher, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to invite you to now shift your focus and attention to the video that we have on the screens here on the walls on the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation to get a better understanding of their work and objectives. Let's take a look.
If you follow the news, chances are you've heard of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Forum, more commonly known as APEC. You would have also seen footage and photos of world leaders gathering during the yearly APEC Economic Leaders Meetings. For a lot of people, that's the extent of what they know about APEC. Of course, it is much more than that. APEC is a multilateral organization made up of 21 members that line the Pacific Ocean, who are working towards a common goal of bringing growth and prosperity to the Asia-Pacific region. APEC's members participate in the forum as economies. This emphasizes the forum's focus on matters of trade and economic cooperation. Under these conditions, members who have different approaches to policy can find a common approach to finding solutions and getting things done. APEC is culturally diverse. It includes both developing and advanced economies. Collectively, the APEC region is home to almost 3 billion people, accounting for half of world trade and more than half of the global economy. It is important that we understand that APEC isn't just the annual leaders meeting. In fact, it is a continuous process involving around 20,000 representatives from all levels of government, with representatives from business and the academia, attending hundreds of meetings held all year long. They meet to ensure that goods, services, investment, and people move easily across borders. Members align regulations, set standards, and agree upon policies that make it easier to be an entrepreneur in the region. Officials learn from each other about dozens of topics, ranging from economic growth, increasing the participation of women in the economy, energy, public health, e-commerce, to the environment, and the list goes on. Diverse as APEC is, getting everyone to be on the same page requires a lot of work. Which brings us to one of APEC's defining characteristics. By intent and tradition, APEC is less formal than other forums, and its outcomes may be adopted by members voluntarily. This may seem unusual, but it makes APEC an important platform for cooperation. Even as members deal with delicate issues outside the forum, they will continue to engage each other in APEC. The forum is consensus-driven, and each member has an equal say in decision-making. Because members can cooperate without the pressure of binding agreements, there is less inhibition around new initiatives. This has made APEC a test kitchen of sorts, which has developed more than a few successful ideas that have been adopted by other organizations. APEC's structure has allowed it to grow organically and adapt easily to the times. Although it may not be obvious, we feel its effects. APEC is changing the way the world works and is making life better for people in the Asia-Pacific region. To learn more about us, visit www.apec.org or engage us on social media.
That's right. Ladies and gentlemen, the driving force behind the MICE industry in Malaysia particularly, of course, we can all agree, is the Ministry of Tourism, Arts and Culture. And it must have been, I presume, an extremely challenging time for the ministry as they tried to navigate through the crisis. We're still in the thick of things, but that ultimate goal being to kickstart and bring back to life once again the industry through innovative ideas, initiatives, and of course, new strategy. To give us a better perspective of this, please join me in welcoming for the opening remarks the Secretary General of Ministry of Tourism, Arts and Culture Malaysia, as well as the Chairman of MICEB, Yang Berbahagia Dato Dr. Noor Zari bin Hamat. Dipersilakan, Dato. Yes.
Thank you, Jessie. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Distinguished APEC Tourism Working Group members, distinguished speakers, Ministry of Tourism, Arts and Culture of Malaysia, senior officials, distinguished government officials and business partners, honored guests, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. A very good morning and warmest greeting to all of you. First and foremost, it is truly an honor for me to be here today with all of you, and would like to thank everybody for participating in this APEC MICE forum with the theme, "In Crisis, There is Hope and Opportunity." It is great to see everyone, both physically and virtually, on this pleasant day. The COVID-19 outbreak has been devastating to the global economy. The World Tourism Organization, UNWTO, estimates international tourist arrival this year could decline between 58% to 78%, depending on the pace of normalization, and this would translate to a loss of US 310 billion to US 570 billion in international tourism receipts globally. Undeniably, it has certainly been a challenging year for all in the tourism industry, especially the MICE industry, which is one of the hardest hit. Nevertheless, while we wait for the borders to reopen and to allow us to meet together as before, it is encouraging and positive to have a forum such as this to embrace the next normal in organizing future events in the MICE industry. Hosting this APEC MICE forum is an honor for Malaysia, as it is one of the APEC Tourism Working Group's initiatives to help restart and strengthen the tourism industry, particularly the MICE industry. This forum is held to bring together the MICE industry players from the APEC region and other international industry international industry partners to exchange opinions and strategies to revive the MICE industry. I am also glad to inform that this forum is specifically looking at the sustainable growth and the equitable development of the mines sector in the Asia-Pacific region, as well as to improve the economic and social well-being of the people, besides deepening the spirit of community in the Asia-Pacific region. This is very much in line with the APEC's goal for capacity building. Furthermore, the APEC ministers responsible for trade called for effective mitigation of the economic impact of COVID-19 pandemic and promptly navigate the region towards a path of resilient, sustainable, inclusive, and expedited economic recovery. This is what we are trying to achieve throughout this forum of our mines sector. Thus, the APEC Mines Forum seeks to encourage and reinforce strategic collaboration to further improve the tourism sector by adapting to the next normal towards making a gradual and significant contribution to the global economy. Ladies and gentlemen, as we all know, the worst hit subsector within tourism is the mines industry, which had great potential as a significant and rising segment in the tourism industry. However, the COVID-19 outbreak brought the whole mines industry to a standstill with unparalleled and unforeseen impact to the lives, economies, societies, and the livelihoods associated with the industry. Before the pandemic, the mine industry was the highest revenue contributor to the travel industry, which experienced exponential growth due to the rapid globalization and the expansion of services industry and the continuous evolution of scientific and technological innovations. The global mines industry was enjoying tremendous growth, with projection to reach US 1.439 trillion in the year 2025, and the Asia-Pacific was to be the main beneficiary of this growth. According to Colliers International, the Asia-Pacific region emerged as the fastest growing region for the mines globally, generating US 229 billion, or to 28.4% of the global mines revenue in 2018. It was expected to witness the highest compound annual growth rate of 8.6% to reach US 441.1 billion by 2025. However, since the onset of the pandemic, hundreds of business events have been canceled all over the world. As a result of these adverse conditions, most of the events have been canceled, postponed, or relocated. It is also predicted that the mines industry will be the last sector to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. In response to this challenging situation, the APEC region is progressively reviving the mines industry by formulating and implementing comprehensive tourism recovery plans, strengthening destination resilience, as well as encouraging innovation and tourism sector investment. This is to instill assurance in the industry that the economies are prepared to restart tourism in a more responsible manner. In the case of Malaysia, we have partnered with the local industry players in organizing various programs. One of which is today's program of Meet in Malaysia at Malaysian Business Events Week, which is anticipated to give a major impact to the industry players in identifying and seizing opportunities during the crisis and rebuilding everyone's confidence in this sector. Other initiatives undertaken by Malaysian Convention and Exhibition Bureau, MICEP, include helping the local industry players to recover from losses at times of crisis, such as during MCO, during Movement Control Order, and always inspire the local industry to keep on planning for business events through alternative initiatives such as technical enhancements, Twin Deal, the MTDV, the Exhibition Enhancement Package, EEP, and the Homegrown Event Support. MICEP also completed a business exchange competitions, which include industry players, which include industry champions and undergraduates to contribute their ideas on how to cope with the new norm business event organizations. Ladies and gentlemen, at the international front, to ensure that the tourism industry and the MICE industry remains resilient, the ministry intends to explore the possibility of establishing travel bubbles on a reciprocal basis. The proposal to establish travel bubbles is based on the potential of the market to contribute to overall economic growth, including trade activities, business travelers, and the influx of foreign tourists, while taking into account safety and health aspects. However, the implementation of travel bubbles is subject to bilateral discussion with paramount consideration on the aspects of health, immigration, contact tracing, and continuous monitoring by respective agencies concerned in related economies. We hope this can be materialized soon. Ladies and gentlemen, before I conclude, it is my sincere hope that this APEC MICE Forum will serve as a platform for the industry players to communicate and discuss issues that may impact the future growth and sustainability of the business events industry. I believe this meeting of minds will bring fresh and constructive ideas to help revive the MICE industry. Most significantly, by introducing specific protocols or standard operating procedures, our partners and stakeholders in the MICE industry will be able to take important steps towards restoring confidence in the industry. Let's start working together to encourage and strengthen strategic collaborations to further improve the tourism sector and MICE industry by adjusting to the next normal and making a positive impact on the global economy. Therefore, I hope our forum today will be mutually beneficial to all of us. I look forward to learning and sharing as much as possible on our experiences and initiatives over the upcoming presentation and discussion sessions. Finally, I wish all the delegates for the APEC economies and MICE industry all the best, and together, let us seize the opportunity to rediscover MICE, diversify, and to recover stronger from the pandemic. Baik, sekian, wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dato. Thank you. Definitely some salient points, Dato, that you brought up, and I think in conclusion, it would be safe to say that we are better together, and in crisis, there is definitely hope and opportunity. Ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker will grab your attention. She's a journalist, a TV presenter, news presenter, and a communications specialist who has earned respect throughout her 3 decades in the Australian and Southeast Asian broadcast news business. Beyond her role as a news anchor, Tina is also a successful communication and a media trainer, as well as a professional speaker. She relishes her work within the business events industry as a crisis media specialist and speaker. She also enjoys motivating senior leaders throughout the APEC region to communicate, influence and inspire audiences to brand new heights. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome all the way from Australia, Ms. Tina Altieri, founder and principal managing partner of the Media Australasia Xchange, or MAX, with her presentation today on communication strategies, presenting yourself powerfully in times of crisis for MICE industry players and leaders. Tina.
Thank you so much, Jessie. How much of a pleasure is it for me to be with you today? It's absolutely wonderful to have you all with us this morning, and we are so delighted to be able to talk about presenting yourself powerfully in times of crisis. Now, before we get to hear from our wonderful expert APEC panel, I want to give you all a bit of a fresh perspective on what it means to convey hope and opportunity during this really challenging time, because there's no doubt about it, the way that we communicate in times of crisis, how we're seen as an industry, how we are perceived as a team within the MICE industry, indeed depends on how we.
One second, Tina, if I could just hold on, just put you on pause there. We have a slight connection problem. Let's try and sort of revive the line there. Tina, could you say something?
Yes, certainly. Can you hear me?
You're back.
Clearly?
All right.
That's great to know. Fantastic.
As it is with the new norm now, everyone's social distance here in the hall as well, and so moving forward, definitely the new norm.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Jessie. And yes, we will get there. Perhaps my slides might not be also working so well from a distance, but that doesn't matter. I'm very happy just to continue on. We'll go to the next one, which says that how important is first impressions when it comes to delivering our key messages? Because we know that in times of crisis, the first stories stick. We also know that everything is developing so quickly. We're hearing new news every 24 hours on what might be happening around the region in terms of the numbers and the pandemic. So it is important to remember that first impressions are absolutely everything when it comes to delivering the narrative. And it is important to ask yourself, in this time of pandemic and uncertainty, how are you coming across? In other words, are you keeping pace with being able to convince and persuade and be credible? So let's move forward and let's ask, what does credibility look and sound like from the perspective of communications? And we'll move forward in the slides right now. So what I've done is I've come up with the acronym called PACE. Let's move on to the next one. And PACE is P-A-C-E. P is for positivity, A is for authenticity, C is for clarity, and finally E for engagement. And one thing that's really clear is that we've just heard from our wonderful guest speaker that indeed the MICE industry might be the last to get back on its feet. But I can say for sure, in the many years that I've had the pleasure of working with people, not only at MICE, but indeed the region, in the MICE industry in the region, is that when it comes to engagement, we are the best at being able to engage not only those within the MICE or the meetings industry, but also key stakeholders. So this is about engaging, captivating, motivating our audiences to believe us with a strong, logically supported argument. This is the time when looking at ourselves and looking at our own ability to come across with credibility is making sure that every time move on we can move forward with the slides when it comes to clarity as well, and that's clarity in conviction and the spoken word. Next is about A, and that is about authenticity. And authenticity is something that people are looking for in these very difficult and challenging times. And finally, a positive and inspiring tone. And isn't this what we're talking about today? Hope and opportunity with an inspiring and positive tone. So let's take a look at the next one, and let's take a look at engagement. How well are we engaging with our audiences, even in troubled times? We know this, that in fact, we have a very short window of opportunity to influence our audiences. Now, once upon a time, we used to do, presentations and pitches, and we used to take a long time to get to our point. One thing we know about how we engage best in this pandemic is that we have a very short window of opportunity. Let's take a look at how long we have to engage our audiences. And it is, if we click one more time, it is indeed just 22 seconds. We have 22 seconds to start influencing an audience before we lose them. So if we are serious about conveying the messages around the mice industry, the importance of the mice industry, if we are serious about engaging government and keeping people about our industry, we have to start influencing, and we need to start doing it very. As we move on to the next slide, that our introductions are really, really important when we are conveying our credibility. So here are some ideas how we can start really good meetings, really good presentations. Let's take a look at some of those. And by that, we mean a question, often a rhetorical question. Are we using some striking statistics to be able to engage people as well? And are we using little known facts about the meetings industry and how it relates to everybody? And finally, headlines that really enable people to understand the importance of the work that we do within the meetings industry, and let them get it again very, very quickly. Let's move on to the next one, and we're talking about the C, and that is, of course, around clarity. And what we mean by clarity is the fact that quite often, I think we all have the tendency to want to download and dump data, especially in difficult times. We want to convey how difficult the market is right now. We want to almost startle people into realizing how tough it is to be able to move forward in the industry. But remember, what is clear is that we can quite often baffle or confuse our audiences when all we do in our presentations, in our meetings, and our pitches is that we just convey data and we don't persuade, when there's no clear point or there's no audience benefit. Let's take a look at those things on the next slide. Those things are really important. This is where clarity and conviction really disappears. So have a think about that. Let's click on right those three, 1, 2, and 3, and let's show where clarity and conviction really disappears. Doesn't convey data, no clear point, no audience benefit. So let's take a look at the next one in our PACE, and let's take a look at authenticity and how important right now is authenticity in a world where we are mixed up, where we are confused, we're concerned about what the future looks like. And authenticity, in my mind, also speaks to us about how well we listen. And don't you love this quote from Stephen Covey? Let's take a look at this next quote. And it says, most people don't listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply. And I find that now, if we are serious about being great communicators, we've really got to listen. We've really got to do active listening rather than passive listening. And by that, I mean, are you listening to really understand rather than just waiting for your turn to talk? When we do listen well, here's another really good technique that I want to furnish you with, please, in giving you some ideas about how we can, what I call, launder the language that we can use. And what I'm finding with a lot of leaders, a lot of people within the mice industry, is that they're saying to me, Tina, it seems to be all bad news. There doesn't seem to be a lot of hope. But here's a little technique that I find is very, very important in order to let people know that we are listening. So let's have a look at some of this laundering language examples. When you're hearing some of the, quite often negative narratives and negative messages that come through, I want you to be able to listen very intently, listen actively, and then be able to use lines like, what I'm hearing is, and then reiterate, or it sounds like what you're saying is, or so if you're saying your concern is with, or I'm really interested in hearing about, and then rephrase or reiterate. So these are some examples that you can use in terms of being able to show that you are really listening to those important comments that you are getting back about our industry. Because one thing I know about how governments are listening at the moment, how associations are communicating at the moment, they're saying that everybody wants to speak, so it's a very noisy environment, but nobody is listening. So here is a great way of you to be able to show that you are listening by using laundering language. I want to go to the next slide now. And the next slide is really, in my book, a very important piece of information when we're faced with challenging situations. And I do this often, and I tell my coachees, whenever you're facing challenging situations, when there are jobs or livelihoods at stake, I ask myself, before I want to contribute to the noise in the room or the noise in a meeting, I ask myself this: does this need to be said? Does this need to be said by me? And finally, does this need to be said by me now? And I find that this is a very, very useful tool that you can use in order to really try to, how can we say, cope with challenging situations, because I'm finding that people are jumping very quickly to conclusions, and they're jumping very quickly to try and find a solution. So here is a way of us being able to stop in those challenging situations and ask ourselves to take stock before we contribute to the noise, because it is important that we start thinking about what hope and opportunity looks like. So let's just take a look at the last slide. And this indeed is just a reminder about how credibility looks and sounds like from a communication perspective. And it means, are you speaking in a positive and inspiring tone? Are you speaking authentically? And I think that's really important. Are you speaking with clarity to cut through to your message? And are you engaging as very best as you can to be able to get on board the key stakeholders and the people, your own community? Let's engage the community in the best way possible. And we can do that when we commit to being able to communicate with that positive, inspiring tone, knowing that, of course, we, even ourselves as leaders, have an opportunity right here and right now to be agile, to show our resilience, and importantly, to communicate and to influence with hope, with empathy, and of course, with credibility. So today, I do hope that you will think about keeping pace with the way that you communicate in that positive and inspiring tone, with authenticity, clarity, and of course, engagement, because we have an opportunity right here and right now to make a difference. And all we need is to make a choice that there is hope and opportunity around the corner. And if we work together, here is that golden opportunity to really make a difference. Thank you so much for the great opportunity today to be able to speak with you. And I'm looking forward, Jessie, to any of your questions.
That's right. Thank you very much, Tina. Of course, very insightful, an acronym that always works. PACE, positive and inspiring tone, authenticity, clarity, and engagement. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to open the floor now to any questions that you would like to direct to Tina. Of course, you can put your questions into Slido, and we'll take them out from there. To get the ball rolling while I wait for questions to come in, Tina, I wanted to go back, because what I'm hearing you say, to use the language, I listened. PACE, I was quite intrigued, of course, by the engagement aspect of it. I think as we have been hit, by the crisis, it is obviously a fact that businesses have to move online, on platforms online, whether it's e-commerce based or even using social media. What are some of your tips to engage effectively with the audience? And I think in that aspect as well, to gain audience, because that could be the starting point. Tina?
Absolutely. I think that's a great question, Jessie. It is about what I'm finding now, and I'm spending a lot of time coaching and training teams in this space on the virtual platforms. We have to keep things shorter and sharper because we've got fatigue out there. Everyone's having 11, 12 meetings a day. And it is really important that we remember to deliver in a very concise, as we mentioned, clear way. There is no room at the moment anywhere in the region for these meetings to communicate in the way that we used to, which is quite often in a very long-winded way. So I think that's really, really important. How can we get our message across very succinctly? And if there is one important takeaway from this whole situation of having to be so fatigued by virtual meetings, is that keep it sharp, keep it clear, and cut through whenever possible. And I think that's really important. That's what people are looking for. As well, too, I've got this thing, Jessie, that I'm really passionate about, and that is, are we avoiding the tendency to be tone deaf? And what I mean by that is, we're facing so much crisis, so much trauma, so much heartbreak with our livelihoods, with people's lives. We're facing not, of course, just an industry crisis, we're facing health crisis, and we're talking about lives at risk. So be aware of your social media posts, that they are not tone deaf. I always think that if I'm going to post something, I think about how does it look? How does that post look next to potentially a post that says lives have been lost and children children have been affected? When I think about that, I rethink about what I'm posting, because I know that I have to deliver with empathy, and that's what people are looking for right now. So let's not be tone deaf. Let's really think hard about what are we saying out there? What are we putting out there? And what does that look like if we post and we know that a nearby post next to ours talks about lives being lost? How will that change the tonality of what you post and of what you're saying?
That's right. I think it goes back to the old saying, think before you speak. Now, in this day and age, think before you type. Dato? I'd like to look at Slido now for some questions. Do we have any questions that have come through Slido? Or if anyone would like to speak, I could pass you the mic very easily. We have Tina on the line right now. We have another discussion at the end of the hour with all our speakers who will be chipping into the discussion at that point. But for now, any questions for Tina? I'd love to take them from you. Dato, perhaps you would like to post a question to Tina? An opportune time to ask Tina, joining us all the way from Australia. Tina, what else do you think you would like to highlight at this point of time, particularly for the mice industry?
Yeah, look, I think what's really important is a sense of solidarity. And I really believe that when we talk about crisis and hope and opportunity, that this is the time for us to step up and to show our solidarity as an industry. Now, I've been blessed in that I've had an opportunity to work with so many leaders in the industry over the last decade, and they do it so well. They do it so well when it comes to events, and they do it so well when it comes to banding together, and there really is a sense of a family working hard for the strength of the industry as a whole. So we need to do this better than any other industry right now. And
Thank you, Tina. Thank you very much for weighing in and for your session today as well. We are running short on time. We have the other speakers on the line as well. Tina, thank you, and please do stick around until the end of the hour when we have the panel discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, Tina Altieri joining us from Australia. We move on now to our second speaker for today, and this is a speaker who has got vast experience in the land of 1,000 smiles. Any guess where? Of course, it's on the screen already. Ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker will be speaking from his perspective as the president of the Thailand Convention and Exhibition Bureau, Mr. Chirit Isarankun Na Ayutia. He started out with the Tourism Authority in Thailand and has moved up to be the president of the Thailand Convention and Exhibition Bureau. Welcome very much, Mr. Chirit. Thanks for joining us today. The stage is all yours.
Sawadee krap. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, all over the world. And now we are on new normal, so we can see you more, and also the audience in Malaysia. First, I'd like to thank APEC and also the Ministry of Tourism Malaysia to have this such a great event. For Thailand Convention and Exhibition Bureau, we are under the Prime Minister's office by his Prime Minister who helping in developing the MICE industry. And I would like to start my presentation by telling about the Thailand MICE industry, which is very important for our economic and social development in Thailand in the past 15 years after we start TCEP. Thailand MICE industry has achieved growth regardless of incidents from time to time. The latest economic impact study shows that Thailand MICE industry contribution to 3.6% in 2019, which the value economic impact raised up to 630 billion, which is about 20 billion US dollar in 2019. And as a part of travel and tourism sector, which contribute nearly 20% on the GDP of Thailand, of the total Thailand economy. In the past 20-year master plan, the next slide. Okay, thank you. The next slide will show that we are under the national strategy, 20-year national strategy, and which tourism and MICE became one of the major economic to develop the economic and social in Thailand, which to achieve goal about the security, prosperity, and sustainability. We try to move through that. And the next slide, please. So Thailand Convention and Exhibition Bureau, we can see that this pandemic which happened is also, there are also many incidents that happens along in past 20 years. For us, we have some political incidents in Thailand, and also the SARS. You remember SARS now? In 10 years ago, it happens. But this pandemic, especially for the COVID-19 situation, is a very serious one this time. But we've been coping the COVID-19 through our country. We have set, the government has set the Thailand Center of COVID-19, which the Prime Minister himself is on the head of the table, comprising of ministry. The key to agency is Ministry of Public Health and also the National Security Council. So we work together under the PPP, the public, private, and people in order to cope with COVID. And it helps us to become the second rank of the world for the successfully maintained zero internal case, approaching now 100 days already that we have a zero internal case of COVID-19. But it's also, we also the second, there will be, we have to take care, and we have, in Thailand, we have everyone now need to be careful, and I think it's throughout the world. So the second slide, I come back to the second slide. This is, okay, I already talked about this. This is the value of mice industry last year, which is not this year. And okay, the next slide, please. And we have faced with a lot of, we can say, the VUCA world, the volatility, the uncertainty, the complexity, and ambiguity, which COVID is one of them. Actually, we still face with the demographic change. We still face with the disruptive of innovation for the mice industry, and also the climate change, especially, and also the trade war. So there's other things too out of COVID. And the next slide, I would like to concentrate on COVID now. What we done after COVID-19. The first thing is we have to shut down the country. So that's why we maintain in domestic. But before that, we have to shut down the country. We are shut down pretty well. Everyone have to wear masks, and all the places are closed during February. At the time, we have a lot of risk, so that's why we closed down the country. So all the business is stopped, especially for the open area. So we have, at that time, we helped the industry to prepare for the opening, for the reopening of places such as the convention center, the hotels, the conference rooms, the event hall or something like that. So we have the hygiene regulation for all the venues for mice. So that is a collaboration between the Ministry of the Health and also the Thailand Council, and also we help for the Thailand recovery plan. We help all the sectors in supporting the hygiene. We support both the budget and something to help to prepare all the people, and also training courses for all. And the government also inject the budget to help for the recovery plan for the places and the training. And also last April, beginning of May, Thailand is open for the public, I mean in the domestic mice, because they started to have a concert and exhibitions. Is the first start, is a domestic exhibition. So we have regulations of the COVID, and but that is for what we have done. But mostly people need to support because they're losing jobs. They are some of the people need jobs, and some of the people. So we have to help to give them hope. So hope is very important for everyone. So we had the video to show you. This is some part of the video, the short one, to show that what we try to communicate with all Thai people to give hope and to prepare for the opening of Thailand as usual. So please look at the video. Thank you. The next slide.
ในวันที่เราต้องพบกับจุดเปลี่ยนวิถีชีวิต เคยเปลี่ยนหัวใจที่เสียสละหัวใจที่แบ่งปัน
คนที่เอามาให้ก็แฮปปี้คนที่มารับก็แฮปปี้ถ้าคนไทยไม่ช่วยกันแล้วใครจะมาช่วยเรา
หัวใจของนักสู้
ปรับตัวเน้นให้เข้ากับสถานการณ์ที่เกิดขึ้น
เราก็มีการจัดทำลักษณะของการขายอาหาร Delivery
อยู่ไหนมันก็ต้องทำงานได้
เราผ่านมาด้วยกันและจะไปด้วยกัน
ทุกคนต้องรอดไปด้วยกันทุกคนต้องมีข้าวทาน
เราท้อได้แต่ว่าอยากให้มองถึงว่าคือยังมีวันพรุ่งนี้ให้เราสามารถที่จะก้าวไปใหม่ได้
พวกเราจะกลับมาพร้อมๆกันเป็นพลังสำคัญในการขับเคลื่อนประเทศของเราต่อไปครับ
ให้เราได้ยิ้มกันอีกครั้งให้ธุรกิจได้เดินหน้าต่อให้ประเทศไทยแข็งแกร่งยิ่งกว่าเดิมขอบคุณทุกหัวใจสำนักงานส่งเสริมการจัดประชุมและนิทรรศการ
Okay, so this is the
There was almost an applause from the audience. Audience, let's give that ad an applause. Very classic and true to ads from Thailand. I think we can all agree. Very heartwarming, sir.
Yes, thank you, the audience, and thank you, everyone. And I think this is something we have to go to walk together through this COVID-19. And I'm sure that if we have a good collaboration, now I'd like to show that this is something that gives us hope. And I would like to share this to you all. And that I think the collaboration between the internationals, between the countries will help too. So this is something that I'd like to show you to end my presentation. We had a lot of the two key factors of facing this crisis is communication within and communication, especially for the people in the stakeholder PPP, and also the collaboration. The Prime Minister himself, he's the one who stand and he helped to establish the so-called the council, the Center of COVID Situation Administration, which comprising all the government sectors, all the government departments to help, especially the Ministry of Health. They are now the doctor as a hero, and the National Security Council. And we also have support in terms of communications. This is something that TCEP doing the next slide. The past several months, we have a situation update through the industry. We have the leader, the Deputy Prime Minister to help to do the virtual meeting space. For the next two slides, maybe you can pass through. We help working all over the world with our representative. TCEP, we have a representative all over the world, in each part. So we have locals who, usually the next slide, we have the locals representative to did the webinar series. So that is helping us all over the world to show and to communicate with all our clients about the situation update. And as we are the second country that in the world that recovery according from the WHO, the World Health Organization. So we think that and confirming positive that we will be able to help to open the country after, or as the Mr. Minister has quote from Mr. Minister of the Tourism and Culture of Malaysia, that the travel bubble probably will be one of the solutions to help the economic crisis. And we're thinking about opening Phuket as an island to have a travel bubble with some part, which is I can share after we've done that. But now we're doing the travel bubble, and also all the communication, and we also have the hygiene guideline for the next slide. Everyone now, all the venues in Thailand are hygiene, and the government by TCEP, we are support of doing for the private sector and everyone. And also the last one is we get ready to open the country. So after now after we open the country and we welcome the international, maybe one of the country that they already done the COVID-19 free too. We have the mobile application that can tracking down all the delegates from internationals. Actually, for the exhibitions, we already present the exhibition industry because Thailand, the international exhibition, for example, the Thai Fed, the Thai food, Thai Fest, which will be happen at the end of this month, September. We will welcome the international exhibitors who would like to quarantine in the what national Thailand Center of COVID-19 regulation. If they quarantine before they arrive Thailand, we will have the whole set of preparing all the doctors and everyone gonna be and precise with all the members. And also we prepare and connect and to other welcoming people that will come to Thailand, but we have to most importantly they have to pass through all the national COVID situation administration, which the Prime Minister is head. So it's ahead. So we are ready to welcome you soon, and hopefully that during this time we're doing the domestic mice. We push hard for all the company in Thailand to have the events and also meetings. So I hope that we all together as APEC and also the mice industries of the world can help each other, and we should share. And I'm willing to share all the standards and everything to all and to give to you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Terima kasih, Mr. Ayuthia. We have some questions that have come through Slido. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, a quick reminder. You could, of course, post your questions via the Slido web-based application. Mr. Ayuthia, this question says, or rather asks, what is TCEB doing as priority when you're unable to welcome or organize mega exhibitions and conferences?
There are two things. Firstly, we try to work with the organizer, who is the international organizers. For example, the coming, like with TradeX, and also for the exhibitions. Also, we work with the Thailand Association to helping them, which is TICA, Thailand Incentive Convention Association, and also TEA, the Thai Exhibition Association. So we work with the private sectors, and firstly, we still have a lot of expats in Thailand, and we work with them through the Chamber of Commerce, the International Chamber of Commerce in Thailand, and also we try to use more of domestic mice. We start domestic mice with the industry for 10 years, and this time we have a lot of functions in hotels that there's a lot of meetings in Thailand, especially the government meetings, also the corporate meetings in Thailand. They still go on because now for the domestic traveling is okay, but the domestic is only is not cover most of the industry. But what we do is that we try to help to prepare the places and try to have a training courses for all the employees or all the workers of the industries. So at this time we have the hygiene training. We have a skill like hospitality training, in able to help the people in the as much as we can to help them to prolong and to give them the some of the income to help them. So because this time it's very serious about we still have to wait for the vaccine and everything so that's gonna be more than 6 or 7 months. I'm not sure. They had in Russia, but I have to wait for that. But in Thailand, we also have the vaccine now. They try to working on the vaccine too. But anyway, we hope that in March 2021 there could be a relaxing protocol or something that we can have the more internationals to come. Okay.
I think very important point that you've brought up, and I think we've also been reminded here, is the fact that training is absolute requirement, a necessity to upskill and reskill as we try and navigate through this crisis as well. We have another question. I'm not sure how you'll be answering this, sir, but the question asks, clarity is a challenge if we were to communicate online. What are ways to solve this without asking a client to keep repeating themselves when their line is breaking? That's a connection issue, maybe an infrastructure issue, but how have you handled these sort of instances at your end in Thailand, Mr. Ayutthaya?
About the line?
About the connection, being unclear. I think this is pretty much also, I guess, in another format, a new norm. This happens ever so frequently. There's no guarantee if you're having an exhibition or a conference and you have an international speaker that you are going to, be able to have a good connection, because unfortunately infrastructure issues are maybe a challenge in some countries around APEC as well. So how were what are some of the strategies you had in place to ensure, if you did, that if there was some sort of speaker that was coming through internationally, or you needed to communicate with someone internationally, that you kept the lines stable and clear? And if you were unable to communicate online, then what do you do? What are the next steps?
Especially, I think that online is also quite difficult, but we also have now we try to develop the applications. The applications which is helping better by line, but you have to accept the application, but we are working on it. And hopefully the 5G is coming very soon. So that's something that we hope. But mostly important thing, one of the issues is that I think that face-to-face is still important, and there's a lot of question about that online will help or make disruption. Disruption will make mice disappear. You don't need anyone. Everyone can do online, and this is something that you can see that online is also difficult. So I thought that. So I think the best way is to have a hybrid event, so combination between online, and combination between face-to-face. Face-to-face still the most important thing to do, and also my last thing is that I think the best way is to have I think in writing is still help, but maybe it's very difficult to do on live. Yes.
Yeah, I think those are some excellent ideas. Get them in print or writing, slides, we could even upload them online, and as well as try to aim for a hybrid event. Mr. Ayutthaya, one more question that's just come through. Which are the areas you perceive that TCEB can work with other national bureaus? Let's take Malaysia, for example.
Yes, we have the AACVB, which now Malaysia is the president of the AACVB is Asian CVB. It's comprising of the Korea, Hong Kong, Singapore, and other countries. I'm not sure, but we didn't have a regular meeting. But I think this time is the best time for us to share. To meet with the AACVB, and we already had that, but we didn't practice enough. So we usually meet once in a while in a trade show like IMEX, ITC May, but I think that if we have start the collaboration between us within the convention bureaus, that would be helpful.
Right, thank you very much, Mr. Ayuthia from Thailand's Convention and Exhibition Bureau for your insightful presentation and sharing. So we will speak to you again towards the end of the hour when we are on the panel discussion. So thank you very much for that. Ladies and gentlemen, we move on to our next speaker, all the way joining us from Australia, Mr. Andrew Heibl, Chief Executive Officer of the Association of Australian Convention Bureau. Andrew entered the business events area, managing events and operations at the Albury Convention and Performing Arts Centre, now better known as the Albury Entertainment Centre. And so Andrew's venue management background at the centre soon changed when the World of Convention Bureau called. He managed the Bureau Xchange in the regional destinations of Albury Wodonga and the Great Ocean Road, as well as chairing Business Events Victoria for 3 years. So definitely an industry player, and he also has reconfirmed his commitment to the industry by taking on the role of the CEO for the Association of Australian Convention Bureau, AACB, an associated board position with Business Events Council of Australia. Andrew, thanks for joining us and welcome to the forum today on In Crisis, There is Hope and Opportunity. You've been holding on there for quite some time. We've been through this forum about half an hour or more so now. So we would love to hear from you, Andrew. It's all yours.
G'day from Australia, and thank you for the invitation to participate in the APEC MICE Forum during Malaysia's Business Events Week. Can I firstly acknowledge the healthcare workers across APEC countries for the efforts they have contributed to care for the sick and prevent the spread of the pandemic, often putting their own lives at risk in order to save and protect others. In my 10-minute presentation, I will give you a brief background on the business events industry in Australia, focus on the impact of COVID-19 on our industry and key needs for recovery in Australia, as well as touch base on future outlook and opportunities. I'll see if I can get my slide to advance. I might need to go to, there we go. Firstly, about us, the Association of Australian Convention Bureau is a not-for-profit representing 17 destination-based convention bureau across Australia. The Convention Bureau models vary, but typically rely on a mix of public funding from state and territory and local governments and private investment through membership and cooperative marketing programs. Collectively, these Convention Bureau represent more than 1,800 tourism and events members and stakeholders across the country. We're 35 years old, formally incorporated in 1985. But it's important to point out that we are not a national convention bureau ourselves, and in fact, Australia does not have a national convention bureau as per some of our Asia Pacific counterparts. From an Australian perspective, all bids are city or destination led. However, our Convention Bureau work very closely with Tourism Australia's BE unit, Business Events Australia, when it comes to promoting Team Australia internationally and via federal support for international bids. Thank you. When it comes to how we fit within the business events industry in Australia, the AACB is one of 5 members that form the peak body, the Business Events Council of Australia. BECA is an alliance of Australia's key business events industry associations. In addition to the AACB, it includes the Australian Convention Centres Group, Exhibition and Event Association of Australasia, Meetings and Events Australia, and the Professional Conference Organisers Association. While BECA has been around for some 26 years and has provided us with an umbrella structure for us to collaborate, we recognised early in the pandemic that we needed to leverage this platform as the one united voice for the industry to ensure that we did not send mixed messages and priorities to government officials and the industry itself. So in effect, we have pooled our resources and efforts to be as efficient and as effective as possible. As we heard earlier, in a crisis, communication must be clear. There would be nothing worse for an industry at this time than to send out competing messages between ourselves, such as COVID-safe guidelines, for example, We must all work together in the same direction. Next slide, please. In 2015, Becca partnered with Ernst & Young to calculate the value of business events to Australia. Since then, we have undertaken 2 updates. The latest update highlighted that for 2018-19, there were 43 million people who attended 480,000 business events in Australia. The industry directly contributed 35 billion Australian, with a direct value added component of 17 billion. It directly employed 229,000 people with wages of more than 11 billion. The future was also bright. Not only had Ernst & Young suggested that the industry in Australia had grown by 30% in 5 years, but Australia moved up to 12th place in the 2019 International Convention and Congress Association's country rankings, with Sydney successfully achieving a top 25 position. In addition, the AACB has been collecting and sharing data amongst its members since its formation, with the main aim of enabling the self-assessment of performance, essentially for internal use. However, in recent years, we repurposed that function to assist us in raising the profile of the business events industry, taking advantage of the long-term strategic forward vision of the industry and positioning it as distinct from leisure travel. The key report resulting from this work is our forward calendar of business events, of which we have international and domestic editions. The slide you see in front of you at the moment is a snapshot of the international edition as at January 2020, looking into the future. As you can see at this time, Australia's Convention Bureau had attracted and secured 368 business events to be held into the future, of which 183 were to be held in 2020. Now, while a few may have slipped through early in the year, Australia's decision to stop the entry of non-citizens and non-permanent residents from March essentially wiped clear this international calendar for the year and some $420 million worth of tourism business instantly. Next slide, please. Further, beyond the visitor economy, the forward calendar shows us that 55% of all business events attracted to Australia fall in the areas of healthcare, professional, scientific and technical services. Therefore, with the cancellation of international business events in Australia, not only have we foregone the high yield delegate spend, but we have also cancelled all in-person trade activity and collaboration within these critical future industries on home soil. Noting the timeline of future international business events along the bottom of the screen, the area circled in red has been essentially flatlined, and here's why. Next slide, please. This is a timeline of Australia's experience and management of COVID-19. We start at late January with Australia declaring COVID-19 as a disease of pandemic potential, 3 weeks ahead of the World Health Organization. Within days, we identified the first positive case in Australia. Now, looking to the middle column, the areas highlighted in yellow were announcements directly impacting business events, commencing on 13 March with a recommendation by the newly established National Cabinet to cancel all gatherings of more than 500 people. This quickly moved to a ban on indoor gatherings of more than 100, restricting indoor gatherings to 1 person per 4 square metres, and finally limiting all gatherings to just 2 persons only on 29 March. Effectively, within 2 weeks, our business events industry was shut down. However, our management of the pandemic was so strong that by mid-June, Australia's active cases dropped below 400. National Cabinet at that point agreed that all states and territories would move within the national framework to step 3 in July, removing the 100-person cap on indoor gatherings across the country. Yet with a community transmission outbreak within one of our states in late June, most other jurisdictions reimposed strict internal border controls, knocking business confidence to an all-time low, with the understanding that future waves could mean business events scheduled for 2021 may need to be cancelled. Next slide, please. So in late March, Becca commissioned a report to measure the impact of COVID-19 on future business events and employment. The two key findings were that 96% of all business events for 2020 were either cancelled or postponed, and it was estimated that 92,000 people would lose their jobs by the end of June. This information was relayed to the federal government just in time for the economy-wide subsidy scheme to be announced and introduced, JobKeeper, a scheme initially to be in place for 6 months until the end of September. Fast forward to June and July, and Becca undertook another sense test of the industry, identifying that 96% of the business events businesses were being supported by JobKeeper. But with the traditional business event season scheduled to end in November and ongoing uncertainty, this second report was also fed into government, seeking to extend the JobKeeper payment. The Prime Minister of Australia publicly recognised the impact of COVID-19 on the business events industry and later announced the wage subsidy extension to March 2021. Next slide, please. In terms of recovery, getting the balance right between support for supply and demand is critical. They are like the two wings of a plane. You cannot have one without the other. We see that the JobKeeper payment has been critical to the survival of business events businesses, keeping employees connected with their employers, to some degree in a state of hibernation. However, now it is time to focus on positive policies that drive demand and business confidence. Under Becca, we have been working with government to explore mechanisms to achieve this within our recovery and rebound framework. And as part of the federal budget process, which was postponed from May to be held later in the year in October. Next slide, please. To quickly run through these thoughts and perhaps discuss in more detail with the panel later, I thought I would raise these few points. The focus on the business case to travel and attend has never been more important than today, with organisations taking a health-first approach for their staff. Next, the only absolute driver of confidence and certainty at this point is a vaccine. However, in the meantime, we must work with governments of all levels to allow business to enact their COVID-safe plans. Having said that, smaller meetings and trade show sizes adhering to social distancing requirements will jeopardise the commercial opportunity of in-person events. So what is the future of virtual and hybrid? Has virtual just been a stopgap, noting that the feedback of participants is not a pleasant one? And what opportunities can hybrid bring? In Australia, our short-term focus must be on getting the domestic market up and running, one at which I might add is valued at around about 90% of our total market share. Also pointing out that our international bid pipeline is very strong, and we're hearing ongoing announcements from our convention bureau around the country of long-term international bid wins. And finally, I point to you Joint Meetings Industry Council's Global Manifesto that points to how we can position business events as a platform to restart economies in a post-pandemic world. That's all from me at this point. I look forward to participating as part of the panel conversation, but all of the research and reports that I mentioned in my presentation are available online at either aacb.org.au or businesseventscouncil.org.au. So as part of our regional collaboration, I implore you to share in the evidence that we've found here in Australia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrew, for your sharings as well. We have a question that has come through via Slido. Let's take a quick look at that question. When is Australia likely to commence with regional and international events, given that, of course, we know that the number of cases in Australia are rather high at this point as well? So any indication as to when?
That's a question we'd love to know the answer of ourselves here. I mean, the most recent conversation and from the previous discussion is around travel bubble. And the travel bubble here in Australia that we've been discussing was with New Zealand. Those conversations are still being had amongst government officials between both countries. However, as I mentioned, we've recently undergone community spread within Australia as part of what you could call a second wave. And likewise, New Zealand, after having 0 cases for more than 100 days, have also discovered some more spread and some new cases, which then means ongoing lockdowns between both countries. So it's something we definitely have on our hit list as an industry here in Australia. But from conversations of both government, but also from Qantas boss Alan Joyce, the assumption is that broader term international travel or our international borders, it is unlikely that they will be reopened before mid-2021.
Andrew, has Australia negotiated any travel bubbles with Asia-Pacific countries? You did mention New Zealand, or rather in particular with Malaysia.
I'm sure conversations are being had frequently and alongside monitoring other countries' case numbers. I do know that there was more recently a conversation around particular forms of travel that could be accepted in a green lane case, which might include business that can look at opportunities of reduced times where people need to isolate before attending their official events. That's something that has been discussed recently, but at this stage, New Zealand would naturally be the first cab off the rank, so to speak, but I'm sure other conversations within the APEC countries are being had.
This is another question, Andrew. Do you have any examples of any revenue models that's being explored at the moment by venues to generate income?
That's a really good question, and one that I'm sure convention centres and hotels across Australia would be looking at quite aggressively. We do understand that through social distancing, the opportunity around numbers, which was the previous game, volume, how many people can we fit, how many people can we attract, how many people can we offer services to, was the previous goal, whereas now that has been impeded by COVID-19. So I'm sure all venues are looking at this very closely from a revenue perspective, but also, from my understanding, is trying to share the load amongst the client as well. So, what is the responsibility of the venue in terms of providing COVID-safe environment, and what are the needs of the client in terms of attending and advising and communicating with their delegates as to what the rules and procedures will be. So I'm not aware of any specific commonly known revenue studies at this point in time, but I'm sure they were all being looked at by individual properties.
Ladies and gentlemen, we could still take more questions for Andrew via Slido. Please upload your questions there. Also, the hashtag is hashtag MBEW2020 if you're sharing or tweeting any of these nuggets of information and sharing from our panel of experts today. Andrew, while I wait for some of the other questions to come through, I had one quick question. What would you say are some of the low-hanging fruits that businesses can do within the MICE industry to keep afloat for now? So what's exactly in that emergency kit, so to say, that we can pull out, and as we move into a phase here where we call the Recovery Movement Control Order, or the RMCO, what are some of those initial jumpstart strategies you could suggest or propose?
Absolutely. So assuming that business is sustainable at this point in time, sustainability is obviously the key focus. The time now to focus on your communication, as we heard earlier in today's session, and your marketing programs. I think this is the time to do that. And thanks to Tourism Australia here in Australia, they have recently announced a $1.5 million package that, which is a business events boost fund, which allows businesses in the business events industry to really look at and enhance those initiatives that they otherwise would not have been able to afford to do, both pre-COVID-19 and during COVID-19. So that opportunity to refresh and rethink your messaging has been made available through that generous offer of government. Look, I think as well, keeping in contact with your clients. At the end of the day, they are still first and foremost the priority, and being with them, communicating the situation on the ground, as well as trying to work with them around concepts around postponement or even how to deliver those hybrid or virtual events.
Andrew, one last quick question. Someone asked, do you really believe that the Australian MICE industry can survive with closed borders until mid next year?
Look, as I mentioned, the domestic market is 90% of the market share here in Australia from a business events perspective. The challenge we have right at this point in time is that the second wave has triggered states and territories to close internal borders. Now, our understanding from industry is that that is the key number one issue that we need resolved within Australia for the domestic market to boom again. And that's something that's been very difficult to get up and running because of and rightfully so, the health first approach. So we're working very closely with states and territories and the National Cabinet at a federal level to really pursue the concept that the internal borders need to be reopened unless it's absolutely critical, such as the case in Victoria at this point in time. So from an international perspective, it's outside of our control. We would much prefer things to be open a lot sooner. But again, thanks to the government's announcement of the extension of JobKeeper through till the end of March, that has allowed some of our businesses to continue to be able to hibernate until such time that we can reopen and move forward again. But we do recognise that even with that generous wage subsidy scheme, jobs will continue to be lost and businesses will have to make the tough decision about do they continue to operate or do they exit gracefully. So that's something we're very concerned about and keeping an eye on with industry.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Ladies and gentlemen, Andrew Heibl, Chief Executive Officer of the Association of Australian Convention Bureau. We have joining us now our final speaker for today's forum. In crisis, there is hope and opportunity. And as we've heard from all the speakers, I think that is definitely ringing through. Despite the crisis we're in, we can rebound. Ladies and gentlemen, on the line right now joining us from Japan, Ms. Yumi Yasuda, MICE Department Deputy Director, Chiba Convention Bureau. Now, Ms. Yumi, throughout her decades of experience as a hospitality industry expert with the Hilton chain, as well as international organizations with the UN on field missions and Japan's ODA implementation agency. Yumi has been working for project formulation, management, procurement, and logistics in the past 9 years, rather in 9 countries, and that has led her to plan and implement various number of international conferences, business events, and meetings from the different industry backgrounds that she comes from. Ms. Yumi, thanks for joining us today, and it's all yours right now as the last speaker for today, and after that we shall move into the panel discussion. The floor is yours, Ms. Yumi.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, I believe. Hello, everyone. I'm Yumi from Chiba Convention Bureau, Deputy Director, as well as First President of MPI Japan chapters. First of all, let me clarify my status today. I'm talking as one of the meeting professionals in Japan with 30 years old. 30 years experience, not representative government of Japan nor any other organizations. So, however, still let me introduce these 2 institutions which I belong to. You may know, most of you may know about the MPI, Meeting Professor International, the largest community in meeting industry in the world. So let me brief about the Chiba. I hope the slide is okay. About in short, instead of myself introduction. Chiba is a prefecture adjoining Tokyo Metropolitan, second tier city as a MICE industry industry, as a MICE destination in Japan. You may not be familiar with the name of Chiba, but Tokyo Disney Resort and Narita Airport in Chiba, not Tokyo. Yes, we are surrounded by ocean as well as having a very rich soil and water resources. It means if you want to have a very delicious Japanese fresh food, Chiba is the place to visit. Come to see me. Well, and let me step on the homework which Susan gave me last week. The purpose. My presentation will be following these 4 steps: the identification of the crisis and the strategies, tools to be motivate the people, hope and opportunity, like every already mentioned in several ways, and solution and industry players. Come on. Well, crisis. And on 16th of March, declaration of the pandemic by WHO, not only Japanese, but everybody in this industry were like frozen, like a frog in front of the snake. Because we don't know what will be happening in very near future. Meanwhile, a lot of the amount of cancellation email in our box in every hours. I think everybody remembers the 10 times. As if we are the world is completely stuck, unfrozen, and unmoved. The real crisis which I found during this time, just thinking back about this time, is not the COVID-19 itself, but the people unable to go ahead, moving, make our steps. Well, so as an industry professional, at the operational level, we know what we should do it. Honestly speaking, just information gatherings, analysis, amend the plan, amend the action plan, and make an emergency program, PTCM, blah, 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 blah. But at the same time, the most important thing I noticed at this moment is focusing the people who is seriously suffering and need support to ask, are you okay? To your colleagues, business partner, stakeholder, or even families. We know what to do, but we need to focus our people who frozen, whether they are okay, ready to make a step. And again, in very large stage, very early stage, and even now on, the focus as management should be shifted, or it's shifted in Japan, at least around me. It's from institutional level to the player level, I mean the person. Okay. Tools to create the culture of tools to create the culture of the creative, connecting the motivated people. As explained previously, the important point is let us to move, go ahead. At organization level, set up the short goal because we are not sure even after 6 months what's going on. So what we have to take into action is we defined at least a 3 months plans as a first time, the one time, to make a very short-term program and repeat it again. It's like, if I quote the phrase of maybe you know, it's like Congrès dans beaucoup, mais il ne passe pas. Congress is dancing very much, but it doesn't work. It might be not very good phrase in the ordinary society, but under such situation, why not let them to dance and dance and dance? Important thing is just move on. People need a direction and goal, therefore giving them to 3 months plans and let them to keep it. It seems like for me during that time's operation, it's like a step on the accelerator and drive like the agile mode. It means, I think Tina already mentioned about this word of the agile in the very beginning, the first presentation. Just do it quickly because we have to move, go, but we don't know what's coming in front of us. So just like this, like a very driving lights and driving the car. Slide. Okay. I want to introduce one of the initiatives by Japanese industry leaders, mainly from MPI, my organization, which I'm very proud. Very much as a chapter leader at the times, called My Future Session and My Future Action, started from March, very early stage of the pandemic. They planned a Zoom 2 hours meeting weekly, every Thursday, just 2 hours, exchange the information, the global situation, local news, or issues, government policy, and everything. Our members, connect all the information and exchange each other. At that time, most of our industry's members are forced to stay home, which most of never had experienced before. Feel alone, stressed, lonely, stressed, and very depressed. But this session makes the people to have a sense of being connected, not alone, by sharing information or chatting with Sake because it is in the evening. And until the Japanese government body is able to show us the direction officially, it takes us several months, honestly speaking. Under emergency relief to recover the period, meeting industry leaders were playing a very important role in Japan. This makes the transaction period to be very seamless. Okay, and sorry. How the industry leaders find the four-panel opportunity? Yes, we have been suffering too much challenges by COVID-19 pandemics. But meanwhile, everybody knows challenges means opportunities. Like border closures, we are not able to get out of our country, or nobody cannot come in Japan. This makes digital content for PR. We are now producing a huge number of digital contents for each region, not only Japan, Chiba. Decrease of the revenue makes us to think work effectiveness. And real meeting to change online meeting, why not ask organizer to use the destination promotion movie in the break time, or even online shopping site on the destination supposed to be meetings of Oregon. This is good for the participants and also good for the destination for revenue income's point of view. As well as, and also as I mentioned previously, lockdown, telework, staying home, makes us to realize the importance of the sense of unity and solidarity. And even the loss of the COVID-19, and honestly speaking, during these 6 months, I lost 2 of my university mates. But this makes us to think about the life-work balance seriously. In short, we started to ask ourselves, what is the most important right now in business level and also private level? Okay, our National Bureau, Japan National Tourism Organization, recently released a very touching video called Hopes Light Away. It's, yes, I just saw the very touching one as well from the Thailand T7 offer, but sorry, no time to introduce today, but please find the YouTube. It is very touching as well to present the Japanese charm even this circumstance. Well, solution. I'm sure those are not the new for everybody, but let me quickly explain about it. Practical level. Promotion safe and secure travel destination is quite important, and guideline based on 3C, with this Japanese called the 3-mitsu, avoid the correct crowdedness, closed space, and close contact. And go to travel campaign in order for people to start to go out. Even this is only for the targeted domestic market, which Japanese 1.6 trillion yen, 70 million US dollars, if I didn't make a mistake, by Japanese government funded. DX, digital transformation, and no matter how the situation goes, we are not able to get back the world without the digital contents anymore, even this meeting industry. So point is how to utilize this in the most effective way. It is how to pursue the income. It is the matter of the discussion anyway. And social issues, lastly, the experience to be with COVID-19 makes us to realize those that all of us were suffered. We are not alone. We need to overcome together. We need to everybody. It means, so why not extend our thoughts a bit wider to the social itself? This is, I believe this is a very important message that this pandemic, COVID-19, telling us at this moment. Okay, our industry, this business meeting industry, is very blessed, warm atmosphere globally. My friend Noor, Hamat, I'm sure he will be the one of the speakers this afternoon. from ICCA, always saying to ICCA like this, ICCA member, we are not competitive, we are family. Also MPI as well, and during our annual chapter leaders congress, this word repeated many times every year. MPI, it's not a head, but a heart. MPI again releasing the very short video named When We Meet, We Change the World, which is also a very moving one, which my strong recommendation to Google it. But anyway, I'm not going to go through. So under this COVID-19, in order to proceed ahead, to step on one more step, let me say that we need to meet to change the world. So let me conclude my short time to say, let's meet very soon from Japan. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Yumi. Let's meet soon indeed, whether physically, in person, or even virtually. Thank you so much. I'd like to bring on all our panel discussions. Yumi, while we have our panelists come back on for our quick Q&A, I'd like to actually say the picture of the edible sushi flower got me really hungry. It's close to lunchtime here, and I'm sure all our audience today as well looking forward to the quick break. But we have 5 minutes on the clock. And so once again, ladies and gentlemen, please share your questions on slido.com. We'd love to ask our experts here who have been on the line and are joining us internationally as well, from Japan, from Australia, and from Thailand as well. As we wait for some of the questions to come in fact, we already have a question here for our panelists. Is AIME the first international event planned in Q1 of 2024, and will it be hybrid? Panelists, feel free to take this question. Dato, if you'd like to weigh in as well, please.
I might start, given that AIM is held in Melbourne. Look, I think as any organiser at this point in time, the organisers of AIM are certainly looking at the environment and monitoring what's going on at this point in time. And I'm sure, as recently announced, there will be hybrid components of that show. But from our understanding, I think we need to rally behind these types of shows, because the industry investing in these types of communications platforms really does deliver confidence to the industry. And us coming together and collaborating around these platforms are absolutely critical at these points in time. So I look forward to seeing everyone in the APEC community either participating online or in person at that show.
That's right. I think one thing I could reiterate from all our speakers today is that we are better together, and if we stick as a family and exchange notes and try to work together, that could be one immediate solution as well. This question back on the screen right now, clarity being a challenge if we were to communicate online. Perhaps our communications expert could weigh in a little bit from your perspective, especially with the PACE acronym. How can we apply these things to ensure that we're communicating effectively, given that we may have bad connections or infrastructure depending on where we are based in the world? Tina?
Yes, absolutely, Jessie. That is the big question. And I've just got to say that over the last 4 months, that I have been conducting everything online, obviously, I could say with a great amount of conviction that there was not ever one event that ran without connection problems or issues. So I think now in this new normal, it's a given that in fact we are going to face that. But what it's forced us to do is to actually re-look and reassess how we communicate and how we get the right people in the job to be able to communicate those key messages. So it's forced some people who actually don't enjoy communicating in meetings and presentations to really step up. And so I'm now seeing a lot of people who come and say to me, you know, I've never liked presentations, but now I'm forced to having give my opinion online in some sort of forum or a meeting, or I'm having to speak to my more senior team. And once upon a time, I could hand it over to somebody else and they would take over. But now the onus is on me and it's on my shoulders. So this really forces people to think through, how can we get our messages across more succinctly, with better clarity and that strength of conviction? And certainly going back to that authenticity. And that's really important, to start honing our skills as people in the industry to be able to communicate that so much better than we have done in the past.
Thanks, Tina. Mr. Ayuthia, here's a question for you. What is TCEB's strategy for Medical Hub, where the focus is on medical tourism and its industry?
Yes, medical tourism is one of the major plan for also not only for TCEB but for all the sectors, especially for the health, Ministry of Health. And then what I would like to say is that for the medical conference in Thailand, actually for the international conference, it's about 50% of total conventions in Thailand. So it is being a major conference in Thailand. And also for the medical sectors in Thailand, especially we have a lot of private hospitals and rehabilitations and that are ready, and also with the Thai Smile service. We are the middle of the so-called medical hub of the region. With the so what had effect is that we are ready to I think as a second rank of destination for MICE that can be reopened soon. I think we are more than ready to have the plan, the medical plan very soon. And now we have all the representatives that I show you in the slide doing for the medical companies, concerning in the medical companies, pharmaceuticals, and everyone to come to Thailand and experience Thai Smile. Thank you.
I would like to respond to one of the questions, whether we should go hybrid or not. It is based on the study by ICCA, shows that 80% of the respondents says that they intend to include hybrid and digital elements in organizing the MICE industry in the future, meaning that we cannot get away from the technology that available around us. And maybe as a way of move forward, I think we need to leverage all the digital technologies available. Regarding the question, what advice and hope can you give to even students who seem to be given a negative picture of the future? I think what the students should do now is that they have to keep themselves updated with all these technologies. The events and MICE industry will keep going, but it depends on us how we are going to manage the event, whether we want to do it physically or we want to do it virtually or mix of virtually or physically. It means hybrid. I think the future is there. It's up to us to what we're calling to leverage whatever technology that we have around us. Thank you.
Thank you very much for weighing in on those insights as well. I think this concludes our session today. I'd like to thank our panelists joining us from the various locations internationally. Thank you very much for weighing in with your expertise and knowledge, as well as Dato. Thank you very much for your presence here and joining us as well in our discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, that has been today's APEC MICE Forum. In crisis, there is hope and opportunity. And here's wishing all of you well. Take care and keep spirits up high. There is hope, there is opportunity, and we look forward to better times ahead. We'll see you and speak to you again all very soon. Take care. Bye-bye.